Well, thank you so much for watching Morning Live. So it's been yet again a very busy week on the news front. So we're going to do a quick wrap, some analysis on some of the big stories this week. And joining us to help us navigate through this is political analyst Sandile Swana, who joins us on the line. Sandile, thanks for your time this morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning to you, Sakina. Thank you for having me.
Sandile, let's start with the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. And yet again, so much being revealed at the commission. But again, the follow-through seems to be missing. But let's just focus on, say, for example, what happened yesterday, the evidence that was Transnet-related that was given at the commission. And much talk once again about the exchange of cold hard cash, what would be seemingly in exchange for patronage from those who were running the state-owned entity at the time. So what did you make of the witnesses, of course, whose identities were revealed at the commission yesterday?
Yeah, no, I think that, Sakina, all of us have to accept that we've suspected for quite some time, first of all, that there is a behavior of this nature exists and it's common in the public sector amongst our cabinet ministers and senior government officials. What we can then say is that this is a confirmation, factually perhaps, more accurately and in detail, of what we've suspected for many years. Once a driver, a person who's been taking you to places and you have asked that person to keep secrets, I think that a witness of that kind is quite a credible witness. Obviously, this is not a court of law. It's us, the community, commenting on these things. To us, they confirm what we've suspected for a long time. However, it also points to a large-scale collapse of good governance in the state.
Now, as you say, we have suspected this for quite some time. The witness speaking about Malusi Gigaba says that he was, for example, Sandile, asked to stop recording these trips to the Gupta household. Now, when we see that, as you say, credible witnesses coming through, what does this mean for the law enforcement agencies and, of course, their ability to act? Because this is what's been missing. We are now just adding more color to evidence that we had already heard and known about. But why are we not seeing any speedy action from the side of those who are tasked with following through on what we have heard?
I can use the words of Robert McBride, where Robert McBride talked about political gangsters as he was trying to clean up the corruption in the police. But at the end of the day, people like Robert McBride who were trying to stop corruption in the police were removed from their positions. Removed not by people who are clean themselves, but by people who are implicated. We know police generals have been implicated in corruption, on a wide-scale corruption. We know for sure that the NPA has more than 400 cases that are pending, handed over by the SIU to the NPA since 2007, and those cases have not been prosecuted. We know that people who killed Makaka were taken to court, and then the cases melted in front of the court because within the NPA as well, prosecuting authority, there is widespread corruption there. So by the time you talk about people being held to account in the justice system, Batory has got to go through a lot to try and clean up that system because it is clogged with an assortment of people who are themselves suspected of corruption.
So what's the point to all of these commissions and other, of course, investigative matters that are being probed at this stage? Because if we are not going to see a follow-through, if there is paralysis in these systems that we know now have been hollowed out, what is the point, Sandile Swana?
I think there is a point, though, because accountability comes from several quarters. You know, you must remember that, I've been thinking a lot. We're talking now about this NPA, we're talking about the South African police, but it just came to me this week that We are a country who are unique in that we even shoot the Auditor General, shoot at the officers of the Auditor General. But fortunately, we have journalists who record this. We even have these commissions who at least record this. And what the crooks who operate from within the African National Congress cannot guarantee is that they will be in power forever, because crime never lapses. If you've committed a crime and it is recorded, it never lapses. Even if it's in 20 years from now, another group takes over power and they will have to line up, just like the Nazis are still lining up in court till today.
You mentioned the issue of Sandile Swana, who was, of course, assassinated. And one of the witnesses in that regard, the whistleblower, Thabiso Zulu, still doesn't have protection from the state, even though it is clear that his life is in danger. There have been attempts on his life. We heard yesterday from those protection officers, the drivers to those implicated in state capture, that they have received threats as well. So why would people come forward and be whistleblowers? Why would they do that if the state is not going to ensure that they are protected, Sandile?
Yeah, let us look at it from two sides. You must remember that here in South Africa, you still have South Africans who have a conscience. You still have South Africans who know what is wrong and want something done about it, which is why they become whistleblowers. On the other hand, we have the gangsters who've captured the NPA, who have captured the ANC, who have captured the South African police, and so on and so forth. So within that, you have these two opposing sides. I don't think there was a time in South African history where the people with a conscience just disappeared into thin air. They'll always be there. The criminals will always be there. It's been a long battle for a long time between these two camps. But we're hoping that through the valid elections over many years, we'll be able to get a government that is able to enforce the law as it stands.
Now, earlier on in the week, there was, of course, Des van Rooyen, who also appeared before the commission, former finance minister, and started with the cross-examination of Lungisa Fuzile from Treasury. What did you make of that overall? The cross-examination, what was said by Mr. Fuzile, and also Mr. van Rooyen's testimony before the commission?
I think some of the statements, I think some of us, first of all, expected that Van Rooyen is probably going to bite more than he can chew. For instance, there was a ridiculous statement about how he appointed advisors that he hardly knew anything about, etc., etc. And all the contradictions between himself and Fuzile. Basically, before the hearing, we suspected that, Fuzile has been a treasury for a long time. He knows what has been going on there. And then Van Rooyen, as people have come to call him, is a weekend special. First of all, he'll be short on detail and accuracy. And to my judgment, his statement was exposed him, first of all, of shallowness, that he didn't prepare anything for it. He didn't do his due diligence. And secondly, Fuzile knew much more about the details and accuracy of facts. It was just that, and you can't just go into cross-examination without actually having counter-facts, actual hard facts. And that, to me, was my summation of Van Rooyen's position.
Interestingly, though, we talk about this whole notion of state capture. There was a point when the question was put to Mr. Fuzile about documents that were sensitive, classified information contained in them, and why these were handed over to people who had not yet been vetted. What's your take on that particular notion? Because to me, what I'm getting at is, we talk about how the wheels came off, but everybody should be taking accountability for their culpability in enabling state capture.
I think that the fact of the matter is that, like I think I have said before, the issue of state capture is in degrees and in fractions. I agree that everybody at some point did favors for certain people. including the likes of Fuzile, including the likes of Nene, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, there must come a time when we no longer discuss this thing in terms of saying that group alone is culpable for state capture. That point I take, absolutely. And there is an attempt by some of the people, perhaps even people like Fuzile, to say that no, they were on the better side. Maybe they did not do as much harm as the others did, but they were involved. So the contest, as we were saying when the new dawn was coming in, that state capture will continue. It will not, because the both sides are there. Cyril Ramaphosa was part of the Zuma camp, and so on and so forth. So we cannot really talk about angels and devils in clear-cut terms here.
Van Rooyen makes another point that I thought was interesting, Sandile, where he talks about this relationship between the private sector and Treasury, whereby you have people coming from the private sector, head up Treasury, and go back from Treasury into the same sector and a certain part of that sector. Is that something we ought to be concerned about?
No, there's very good reason to be concerned about. I think I can make two straightforward points about this. First of all, you'll remember that the ANC had to have meetings when the likes of Ngonyama, Sandile Swana, and others were leaving the public sector and taking up companies that were in the very same sectors that they were actually regulating. Then they talked about a cooling off period, which has never been implemented until today. But coming to the banking sector and the power of the state is in a mess. The banking sector is by and large now the business that South Africa is in. It is the largest sector, unfortunately, in South Africa, economic sector in the GDP. Now, what is happening is that you see people being removed. You saw the chief procurement officer being removed and he was put in Standard Bank. You saw Fuzile leaving Treasury going to Standard Bank. You see ABSA, the relationship between ABSA and Treasury in terms of Maria Ramos and others. So what is happening is that, and we see a financial sector, the banking sector, that since the days, and Mbeki has made this point many times over, that international experts who have visited this country, including Nobel Prize-winning economists, have said that our banking sector is not financing entrepreneurship. Our banking sector is actually keeping privilege and monopoly going in South Africa. And it has got political bodyguards who are protecting it from being transformative and transformational in South Africa. So that link between the political power and banking power or financial power is a big problem in South Africa, and it is a stumbling block to development in South Africa.
And then, of course, there's the issue of the president then appointing an interministerial committee to basically help and assist with uncovering and, of course, dealing with the scourge of corruption as it pertains to COVID-19 right now. And then we also saw yesterday the KZN Premier Sihle Zikalala talking about a lifestyle audit. But these are all things we've heard before, and people saying that, you know, what is all of this in aid of? But do you think these are good intentions that could actually bear some form of fruit at any point, Sandile?
First of all, you know, when this issue of this interministerial committee, this one on COVID-19 and all that came up, you know, I just tried to figure out how many interministerial committees are there? And how many has Cyril Ramaphosa already put in place? You remember when women came up about gender violence and others were stripping naked in front of him, he then set up, there is an interministerial committee. When you go to their websites, you see there's a number of these committees. But what you do not see is actually the resolution of the underlying problems. So what happens is that, for instance, on gender violence, there's already laws and institutions, including departments that are dedicated to that task. And then you set up interministerial committees on top of the work that cabinet has. I think it's a mistake. I think that this interministerial committee, when the FIU has been invited, when automatically the Hawks should have been investigating this thing. I think it is a waste of time, and we've hardly ever seen any results. The armed deal also had its own interministerial committee, and it has not resolved anything until today. So the problem there. The step of the Zimbabwe suggested this many years ago. Cyril Ramaphosa, I think it was 2018, he said it's going to start now with lifestyle audits. The Western Cape has done its own lifestyle audits. Yes, indeed, we welcome the call by Sihle Zikalala that he must conduct comprehensive, non-discriminatory lifestyle audits, and let's see where that takes him. But people who have stolen money and who have been stealing money all the time are well known, and that data must be handed over to the police.
And just a final question, Sandile, with regard to COVID-19 expenditure and accountability. We have once again heard about the budget, the 500 billion that we started off with, subsequently lots of other monies doing the rounds to bring about relief for distressed South Africans. But where's the accountability? We haven't heard, for example, from the Solidarity Fund. You struggle. Yesterday, you talk about the Gender Commission that was supposed to deal with that. That, of course, not COVID-19 related, but you struggle to keep track of the money. So where is the accountability, and how do we as South Africans go about enforcing that accountability from leaders?
Let me just say this. What will shock you is that if somebody were to list in front of you just the accountability and oversight structures that are there, just to oversee finances in a municipality that are already in existence, the policies, the procedures, the structures, you would actually say South African monies are perfectly safe. But whether you go to a province, you go to a national, the structures for ensuring accountability over finances and the laws are totally enough, more than enough. But the morals of the people, regardless of how many laws and how many structures, the oversight structures are corrupt themselves. Those who try to be independent, like the Auditor General, face the bullet. That is where we are with this issue. So the issue of saying that where will the accountability come from? Where is the accountability will never come until the overwhelming number of crooks in the state is actually removed. Because those people defy. In Durban, they chased away, for instance, the Auditor General at one occasion. So even in these things, we said, when we commented on this Solidarity Fund, let not eminent persons be appointed, but honest people. And Cyril Ramaphosa went and appointed eminent persons, not necessarily honest people. So all around these structures, people just look dignified, but they are well-dressed gangsters, as Robert McBride once called them.
Well, Sandile Swana, thank you so much. Some analysis on some of the stories that we've been dealing with on the news front. And that brings us to News Time. Leanne Stan.